Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to another episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence. This is the space where we always say that confidence isn't something you pick up from a supermarket shelf, it is an ever growing muscle. If this is your first time coming into contact with me and or my content, thank you so much for listening in. I'm Tanique Easy, speaker, corporate trainer, facilitator, and empowerment coach. And I support first time and mid level managers with leadership mindset skills to reduce turnover, employee disengagement, and poor leadership execution so that their companies can reduce the loss of profitability. And so they retain top talents, they drive performance, and they deliver ROI. And I do this using my proprietary MVP framework. Again, thank you so much for joining me over the last 2 weeks. Right, over the last 2 weeks, we have looked at the surprising truth that leadership success doesn't start with perfect confidence. Instead, it starts with belief and focus. And so let's recap just a little bit of what we talked about over those last two sessions. We talked about how belief shows up for first time managers, that trusting your potential, that is, and believing in your team and taking small leadership acts that's going to build your confidence and to build that confidence muscle over time. We also talked about how focus aligns with purpose and how focus protects yourself as a mid-level manager from burnout because you're aligning every action with purpose and not pressure. We also last week we looked on flexibility as the strength that many leaders overlook. And so that was the third currency that we spoke about, the third leadership currency that is often overlooked, and that is flexibility. And so that flexibility is the strength, right? And so this week, we are going to look at four mindset shifts that every first time and mid level manager need to adapt in order to handle difficult personalities in the context of their team. And so remember, the currencies of a leader's growth mindset are belief, flexibility, and focus. And so I want you to drop in the chat if you are joining me live here on LinkedIn or you're joining live on YouTube, because we are streaming live both to LinkedIn and to YouTube at this time. And so just drop in the chat where you're joining us from if you're joining us live. And for those of you who are going to catch the replay, you're going to type hashtag team replay in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. And also, as you watch the replay or as you are here with us live, let us know what is standing out in this program today for you. But here's the truth as we talk about the mindset shifts that mid-level and first-time managers need to adapt. And so the truth is that before any one of us decide to lead or before we can lead our teams, we have to learn to lead ourselves. Personal leadership is paramount, it's necessary, it is vital, it is crucial. And I'm using all of those words to emphasize how important it is to learn to lead yourself first, understanding who you are, understanding your personality. And will you get it right all the time? No, you won't. And that is okay. That is okay to not get it right all the time, because it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And so that's where our mindset shift comes in today. And so for me, these mindset shifts that I'll be sharing with you are from various readings that I've done and also analyzing my own personal journey as a leader in the non-traditional sense. Because as I shared with you on several occasions, that my leadership journey didn't start in my corporate job or in my corporate roles. Even though I spent 13 plus years in corporate, I was never in any formal leadership role. But my leadership journey began when I joined, or when I was invited to join community boards, community development boards, when I was invited to become a part of my strata board, and in my own Toastmasters journey, when I was thrusted into leadership there and then. And so, one thing, the first mindset shift that we want to talk about is to prioritize personal development. What does that look like? Because as I read and as I gain more insight and understanding of these mindset shifts, these crucial mindset shifts, is I was reading the Champions Creed. And so, because my framework is called MVP, I am coming from the aspect of athletes and sports, because we know that MVP is in sports stands for the most valuable player. But in my world, that's not what it means. However, so one of the things is that when we're going to talk about prioritizing personal development, the story that I was reading comes from the Champions Creed. And here it is that a coach, a Hall of Famer coach, Tony Dungy. He was the coach for the Indianapolis Colts for a long time. And what he did was, instead of creating not just a culture of players who will dominate on the field, but what he did, he built a culture of continuous personal development. And this is synonymous. We can make that or apply that to our own leadership journey. So, first time and mid level leaders, you can apply this to your leadership context and encourage your team members, because those are the players on your team. Your team members, they are the players on your teams, to explore their passion beyond the office. Because this is what this coach did. He encouraged his team members to explore their passion beyond football. So there were persons who liked art, there were persons who liked music, who liked to sing. It didn't interfere with their performance. And here's what happened. Because here's the thing: when people grow personally, when we grow personally, we actually learn to bring our best self to the work that we're doing, because we're incorporating all of us into that space, into that work. And we recognize that our leaders, our managers, they want the best for us. And so when we want the best for persons, we're going to encourage them. And so the question for you as a manager right now, what's the leadership self-check question, is how are you encouraging your people and yourself? So it's not just your team members that you're going to encourage, but the question is, how are you encouraging your people and yourself to grow beyond your job description? Are you growing beyond your job description? Because many times we are confined to the paper that gives us a description for our job. And we do these self-check, we do these check marks instead of going beyond that. And so in order for our team members, in order for us to build that culture of continuous development, we need to encourage persons and ourselves to grow beyond what the job description lays out for us. Because I want you to think of this as you are encouraging yourself and as you're encouraging your team members. Think of it like if you go to chop down a wood. If you're chopping down, and we've heard the axe analogy, but if you're chopping down a wood and you never stop to sharpen that axe, what is going to happen is that eventually you're going to wear yourself out. You're going to burn yourself out. And so let's think of this personal development, the growth, the encouragement of personal development beyond the job description as the sharpening of the axe process. Because the more we learn about ourselves in that personal development journey as leaders, as individuals, the more we're able to sharpen others. Because here's the thing. Growth fuels resilience. When we grow, when we encourage growth, when we grow beyond our job description, when we encourage ourselves to grow, when we encourage ourselves to learn different things outside of what the job tells us that we need to know, we actually build resilience. We become more resilient persons. And I have personally seen that in my own context, both as a leader in the non-traditional sense, as well as a coach, a mentor, a corporate trainer, an empowerment coach, a facilitator. I have seen how I have grown my resilience, where, recently I experienced a setback. And at one point in time, that setback would have caused me to shrink and to not show up and to not be who I know I'm called to be, to not step forward in my purpose, to not keep showing up in my purpose and in my assignment. And because I am growing, because I'm learning about myself, because I have learned so much about who I am, I'm able to bounce up or bounce back a little quicker than I would normally do if I wasn't in this growth phase of my life. And so the author of the Champions Creed, Ben Utek, says that when you stop growing, you stop leading. And so as managers, as leaders, we don't want to stop growing. We don't want to stop growing. We want to always be growing so that we can continue to lead. And so the second leadership or mindset shift that I want to talk about today, and again, I just want to pause and I want to welcome those of you who are joining us live here on LinkedIn, as well as live on YouTube. Go ahead, tell us where you're joining us from. And for those of you who are watching the replay, type hashtag team replay in the chat. When you watch the replay, let us know your takeaways at the end of watching this session today. But let's move right into the mindset shift number 2. And that is to create a culture for the natural leadership of the person, right? Create a culture where natural leadership flourish, where natural leadership of the team members flourish. Because here's the thing, you may have had, or if you haven't already, you will encounter difficult personalities within the context of your leadership. And those difficult personalities, they can be very antagonistic. Like, I have been there. I have been in spaces where you have personalities because they were the loudest, and their personalities can be seen as difficult, and they're antagonistic. It can feel like you are being pressured. But how do you deal with such personalities, though? How do you deal with such personalities as a leader? And so one of the things is that, so rather than you or us trying to force that individual to conform, right, is that you're going to learn to now pivot without panic. So as a leader, you are going to pivot without panic and to create an environment where this person's natural leadership qualities can flourish in a more positive direction, because they are a natural born leader or they are natural leader. I wouldn't say natural born, but they are a natural leader. They have this leadership tendency, but they don't know how to channel it. And so sometimes, because they don't know how to channel that leadership tendency that they have, while we think, or while it may come across as being antagonistic to us, we can help them to channel those personalities, that personality trait, that personality type, in a positive direction, allow their leadership talent to grow. And so this will not only help you, but it will help the team again to learn to bring out the best in diverse personalities, because not everybody's going to be the same. And so when we learn to create that culture for their natural leadership to flourish, for those who we find that their personalities is difficult and it kind of rubs us the wrong way sometimes, as my friend and co-host and mentor and colleague Dr. Marcia normally says, is that when you learn about what triggers you and how you trigger others, you can create, this is where leadership, you can create that culture to channel their natural qualities. And so it becomes now an environment where people are united with a common purpose without stifling. So you're not stifling their unique strengths of either that particular person or of your other team members. And so those are what you can do. So you redirect the leadership qualities. And so again, the leadership self-check. What's your leadership self-check question? I like to ask leadership self-check questions. So if you know, like when you come here, you're gonna get some self-check questions to go, and it's not, and it's they're gonna allow you to think. And so the question that we want to ask ourselves here is, am I making room for the hidden leader on my team to shine? Or am I only rewarding the loudest voices? And so when we bring out the best in our diverse personalities, the diverse personalities of our team, we allow the hidden leadership talents in all of our team members, because everyone has a leadership quality. We all have the tendency to lead. It's just that we need someone to help us to make that shine from time to time. And so I want you to think about this aspect of your leadership like a garden. So we spoke about the axe, sharpening, the personal development as being the axe where you sharpen not just yourself, but you encourage your team members to learn beyond the job description so that they can sharpen their own skills as well. And as they sharpen their skills, you also get to sharpen your skills, and you all come together to sharpen each other's skill sets. And so here in this self-check, I want you to think about your leadership as you cultivate that culture where natural leadership tendencies will come. Is that you think of it like a garden where you don't force a seed to grow. You don't plant a seed and force it to grow. You actually create the right environment. You plant it in the right soil, and you curate, you cultivate that right environment. And then that seed will do what it is designed to do. You don't force the seed to grow. You don't go there every day and dig away the dirt to see if it is doing what it's supposed to do. No, you cultivate the environment, you water it, you do what you need to do, you put a little fertilizer around it, and the seed will do what it is designed to do, which is to grow and to produce fruits of its kind. And those are biblical references, because every tree produces a fruit after its own kind. And so what great leaders do, and this is Tom Peters. Tom Peters says that great leaders don't create followers, they create other leaders. And so This is the mindset shift that needs to happen, creating other leaders. It's not about creating a followership, but it's about creating other leaders within your team alongside you. Don't be afraid that someone is going to come and take your job, because this is one of the fears for persons in leadership, for some persons in leadership, not all, but for some persons in leadership, is that if I teach you, if I allow you the environment to grow and to shine, you're going to take my job. But you are creating a leader that is going to, you're creating a leader that is going to help to make your team shine even more. So you're creating space so that it's like you're creating what we call a success plan, or success. You have a succession planning going on where, yes, I am creating these leaders to take over my job one day so that I can move on up or move on out. And you're making space for them. And so here's your leadership anchor. Here's the leadership anchor for you today, is that leadership grows in the soil of trust and respect. So it's not about, again, forcing that person to conform because you find them, they have a difficult personality, but it is creating that environment where trust and mutual respect happens. And you cultivate that soil, you cultivate that space. And so let's talk about the third mindset shift that happens here. And that is staying humble and being open to learning. Like, we can't stress this enough. I know we will hear it from time to time, but when we stay humble, when you were promoted to this role, was your first instinct to apply what worked before? Because many times when first time managers are promoted, you are promoted from among the ranks of your team members, and you were a solo, you were one of the best doers. And so you may bring that mindset of being the best doer to this role. But here's the thing, every team is different. You were once within that team and your team was different. Now, are you saying, well, what I'm doing, it feels like I'm helping? So what you may feel like is that I'm helping out could be coming across as being a heavy-handed to your team members. So you're not sure whether you should be friend or you should be leader. And so you come across as this heavy-handed person. And so here's the shift to refrain. And this is to refrain from imposing and start listening. So again, it ties back into cultivating that culture of where the person natural leadership will flourish. Create an environment where a natural leadership will flourish. So stay open and humble to learning. And so oftentimes what happens is because of fear of failure or fear of losing control, because of fear of failure or fear of losing control, as managers, we impose our familiar methods on our teams. And we do this in a wholesale kind of way. Like, here, do this. But one of the things is that if we step back a little bit and if we learn to create that culture where our teams feel valued, it's going to require that we seek input. It's going to require that we seek input from those who are more experienced, because one of the things that I have learned and still learning is, as I grow on this leadership journey, is there are persons within the context of my leadership that is more experienced than I am. So even though I may be the president for my club, there are other persons who are in there that are more experienced than I am. And so when I draw on their expertise, when I draw on their experience, when I'm humble enough to do that, I'm open to learning, then I am building that culture where not only my leadership can flourish, but their leadership can flourish as well. And they feel valued. They feel valued because I am coming to them. I'm not giving them what I think on a wholesale method, on a wholesale way, that this is what we are going to do and this is what my thoughts are and it is my way or the highway. No. But remove the fear of losing control, remove the fear of failure, and seek input. Seek that input from those who are more experienced. Because remember this, the currency of leaders' growth mindsets are belief, its flexibility, and its focus. And so I have to think flexible, I have to be flexible. And so this is where the currency of flexibility is spent. I need to adapt this mindset approach that opens me up to new ideas, and it's going to show my willingness and your willingness to adapt as you enter this new context within your leadership journey. And so C.S. Lewis says that, true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And that is where we stay humble and open to learning. And we want to think about this in the form and context of you navigating a river. Have you ever gone down a river before? Have you ever, went river tubing? And this river, like if you're like from like the Caribbean or probably Jamaica, and during your summertime you would go what we call the country or the countryside, and you go to the river with your family members. That river, and so that river. But when you go to another parish or you go to another space or state and you decide that you're going to do river tubing, you don't know that river. And as I'm saying that, I remember, a friend of mine, he does sailing, and they would often have sailing competition here in Jamaica where they sail from one harbor to the next. And he knows the waters here. And I recall he was invited to the US to sail. He doesn't know that water very much. He doesn't know it. And he had to learn, he had to adjust how he sailed. And so I want you to think of, as a leader, think of how you're leading your team, like navigating a river, navigating that sail. So just because you have known one river, just because you know how to paddle in one river or to sail on one type of water, it doesn't mean that you're going to know how to navigate the curves and the currents, and you don't know all the hidden rocks that are in the other river. And so this is where humility creates influence. Learning how to create that influence because you are willing to adapt the mindset of flexibility. You're willing to adapt this mindset approach of the new ideas, getting the new ideas from those who have been in that team or on that team before you got there. So not fearing the losing the control or fearing failure or fearing of looking like you don't know. You don't have to have all the answers. Seek input, seek clarity from those who have been on the team long before you arrived there. Again, humility creates influence. So, as we are drawing to a close, again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence, where we're talking about 4 mindset shifts that every first time and mid level manager need in order to successfully handle difficult personalities in their context as a leader. So, it's not just and learning how to lead yourself first. And so we spoke about prioritizing. The first mindset shift is to prioritize personal development, not just for yourself, but encourage your team to develop personally beyond the confines of the job description. We also spoke about creating a culture where it seems like there is an antagonistic personality, create a culture where their natural leadership tendency will flourish. And then we talk about staying humble and open to learning. And now we're jumping to the fourth mindset shift that we are going to be talking about today. And that is relentless positivity, developing relentless positivity. Because here's what will happen. And we know, you and I know, because sometimes persons might say that we are also difficult. It's not a one-sided coin, right? It's not a one-sided coin, because persons may think that our personalities are difficult, and we may think that other persons' personalities are difficult as well. And so here's the thing: difficult personalities, they will test your patience. Like, again, I've been there. I have been on boards where you had this one or two persons who were so antagonistic. They find a fault with everything, and they tested your patience. They tested my patience. They really triggered me. But learning how to remain calm, learning how to go outside or go to the bathroom and scream and come back and breathe, take deep breaths, and center yourself once again. That is something that you can do. And so, difficult personalities, they will test your patience, they will test your energy, and they will test your outlook on things. But what I've learned is that when you choose positivity, even when circumstances are hard, even when persons are testing, even when they are testing your patience, it actually disarms the negativity faster than an argument would. And so, if you and I can embody this advice from John C. Maxwell, where he says that the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, the leader adjusts the sails, then is that what will happen is that you and I will start seeing our leadership currency of focus being spent on opportunities rather than on the obstacles that we are facing. And so, in this mindset, this is how we will become an overflow among our team. This kind of mindset, this relentless positivity, will become an overflow within the context of our team. And so, what I want to ask you here as we is that when your team faces adversity, when you face adversity as a leader, as a manager in your context, when those difficult personalities are testing your patience, they are testing your energy, and they are testing your outlook on what you want to achieve, what the team wants to achieve, do you complain? Do you complain about it every single time, every single day? Or do you wait for change? Or do you adjust the sails? Because remember, when we start seeing our leadership currency of focus being applied here, we're going to focus on Okay, what are the opportunities that we can gain from this? What are the opportunities that are here for us to learn and to glean from? Instead of looking at that difficult personality as a pain, but what are the opportunities to create that space where their natural leadership tendency can flourish? Because here's the thing, your attitude demonstrates the attitude and culture of your team. Simple. However, you show up, that's how your team is going to show up. So, your attitude that you are bringing in, it's going to demonstrate the attitude and the culture that is within the context of your team. And so you want to, again, embrace relentless positivity, because positivity is power under pressure. When we embrace positivity under pressure, it shows that we are maturing in our own personality and our growth. And so these are the four mindset shifts that we went through, that we spoke about: growth, cultivating others, humility, and relentless positivity. And here's the thing, these are not just leadership tactics, they are actually leadership anchors. So you use these to anchor your leadership journey. And what the Champions Creed remind us and reminded me of is that champion level leadership is not about avoiding the difficult personalities on the team. It's not about skipping around them. It is about transforming how you and I respond to that person, understanding how they trigger us and how we trigger them, and understanding how to create a space where their natural leadership tendencies will flourish in a positive way. And so, as you head back to your work this week, for the rest of this week, I want you to ask yourself, these reflection questions. Am I sharpening myself? Am I sharpening myself through personal development? Am I creating the soil for others to grow? Am I cultivating that environment for others to grow? Am I staying humble? Am I willing to learn from those who have been on the team longer than I have been? Am I willing to learn from them? Am I willing to ask questions? Am I willing to put my ego or my pride aside and remain humble to bringing them in? Am I adjusting my sails with positivity? Am I being positive under pressure? Because that's the real mindset shift for first time and mid-level managers. That's the real mindset shift. And so I want you to, I encourage, not want to, but I encourage rather, for us to reflect on these questions as we step back into our work week, as we also head into the weekend, depending on what time and when you are watching or rewatching this replay. I encourage you to step back and to reflect on these questions. Again, it has been my pleasure to share in this space with you. If you have found this valuable, share it with another leader, share it with another manager who needs to hear it. And let's keep building leaders who adjust the sails instead of complaining about the wind. And so our next webinar is going to be on October 23rd. Look out for the link to register. And as we often say in this space, invest in your portfolio, invest in your ROI, because confidence isn't something you pick up from a supermarket shelf. It's an ever growing muscle. See you on the next episode of Finding Freedom Through Confidence.